It is December 22nd, 2025. The temperature in Kyiv is dropping, but the diplomatic heat in Washington has never been higher. For the last 2 weeks, a dossier has been circulating through the highest levels of the Pentagon, the Kremlin, and the European Union. It is a 20-point framework, a peace plan that demands a resolution to the war in Ukraine by Christmas. But this isn't just a ceasefire, it is an ultimatum. According to leaked details confirmed by Ukrainian and American officials, the Trump administration is exerting maximum pressure on President Volodymyr Zelensky to accept a deal that would fundamentally alter the map of Europe. The proposal, a controversial free economic zone in the east, the potential surrender of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and a demand for immediate elections in a country under martial law. While the Kremlin calls the talks constructive, Kyiv views them as a national suicide note. Zelensky has declared Ukraine has no moral right to sign away its people. But with Russian missile production hitting terrifying new highs and NATO warning of a direct conflict within 5 years, the window for a good deal is slamming shut. Is this the end of the war or the beginning of a dangerous new precedent for the 21st century? To understand why this diplomatic channel is on the verge of collapse, you have to look at the map. Specifically, the Donbass, the core of the US proposal, streamlined from an initial 28 points down to 20, centers on a concept called the Free Economic Zone. On paper, it sounds like a demilitarized buffer, but when Ukrainian officials read the fine print, they found a condition that stunned the general staff. The plan reportedly requires Ukrainian armed forces to withdraw from the roughly 20% of the Donetsk region they still control. We are talking about the fortress cities of Kramatorsk, Sloviansk, and the logistical hub of Pokrovsk. In exchange, Russian forces would simply promise not to advance. President Zelensky publicly challenged this logic on December 11th, asking a simple, devastating question: why doesn't the other side pull back the same distance in the other direction? There is no answer. The proposal effectively asks Ukraine to voluntarily cede territory that Russia has failed to capture militarily after nearly 4 years of fighting. But here's the twist no one expected. This zone wouldn't be governed by Kyiv or Moscow immediately. It would exist in a legal gray area, a vacuum of sovereignty. Zelensky warned they do not know who will govern this territory. For the 54% of Ukrainians who categorically oppose territorial concessions, this looks less like a peace deal and more like a surrender. But Washington's leverage is the supply line. Without American ammunition, holding those fortress cities might be impossible anyway. While the map is being redrawn, the political legitimacy of the man leading Ukraine is under direct attack. Since May 2024, Volodymyr Zelensky has been serving past the expiration of his original 5-year term. Under Ukraine's constitution, Article 83, elections are banned during martial law. It is a standard wartime provision. But the Trump administration is using this technicality as a battering ram. On December 9th, President Trump stated, "They talk about a democracy, but it gets to a point where it's not a democracy anymore. The demand is clear. Hold elections within 60 to 90 days, but the logistics are a nightmare. How do you hold a vote when 20% of your territory is occupied? How do 6 million refugees across Europe cast ballots? And most critically, how do 1 million soldiers in the trenches vote while dodging Russian glide bombs?" But Zelensky has pulled a strategic reversal. Instead of refusing, he has conditionally agreed to elections. If the US provides ironclad security guarantees during the process, he has turned the pressure back on Washington, effectively saying, if you want a vote, you must secure the sky. It is a high-stakes gamble. If the US bluffs, Zelensky's government could collapse from within. If they fold, the US might be forced to commit to the one thing they've been avoiding: direct security enforcement. While Washington pushes for a quick deal to clear the deck before President Trump's summit with Xi Jinping, Europe is revolting. We are witnessing a historic fracture in the Western alliance. On December 8th, the leaders of the UK, France, and Germany met in London to form what is being called the Coalition of the Willing. Their goal? To coordinate resistance against a peace deal they view as a capitulation. Europe knows that if a free economic zone is established and then violated by Russia, it is European capitals, not Washington, that are in missile range. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte dropped a bombshell on December 11th. Warning that Russia could be ready to attack a NATO country within 5 years. He didn't mince words. Too many are quietly complacent. This fear has driven the EU to take drastic financial independence measures. In Brussels, after a grueling 16-hour summit, European leaders agreed to a $90 billion loan for Ukraine, bypassing the frozen Russian assets dispute to get cash to Kyiv immediately. Meanwhile, the White House has sidelined traditional diplomats. The negotiations are being handled by Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who have been shuttling between Kyiv, Moscow, and Miami. The Europeans are largely out of the room. This has led to a bizarre diplomatic reality. The US and Russia are discussing the borders of Ukraine in Miami, while Europe prepares for a potential continental war. Why is the pressure to settle coming now? Because the military math is shifting dangerously. While diplomats argue over lines on a map, the Russian military machine has fully adapted to a long war. New intelligence released by NATO this week reveals that Russia's defense budget has hit $200 billion in purchasing power terms, equivalent to the spending of the entire European NATO alliance combined. Russia is now producing 2,900 attack drones every single month. They manufactured 2,000 cruise and ballistic missiles in 2025 alone. They are not looking for an exit ramp. They are building a highway to further conquest. Ukraine is not going quietly. On December 12th, Kyiv launched one of the largest drone swarms of the war. 287 UAVs targeting Moscow, shutting down airports for 7 hours, and hitting an oil rig in the Caspian Sea. This is Zelensky's message to the negotiators in Miami. Ukraine still has claws. If you force a bad peace, we have the capability to escalate the pain for Russia. But with Russian forces slowly grinding forward in the east, kinetic strikes might not be enough to stop the political steamroller. And then there is the nuclear wildcard, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Occupied since March 2022, it is the largest nuclear facility in Europe. It is currently a bargaining chip. The Russian negotiation team demands full control. Ukraine says handing over the plant is a non-starter, a permanent security threat that could be weaponized at any moment. This is the sticking point that could blow up the entire 20-point framework. Kyiv insists that any territorial concession, especially one involving nuclear assets, must go to a national referendum. Zelensky knows the Ukrainian people will vote no. This is his final line of defense against the pressure from Trump. The democratic will of the people he is being accused of suppressing. As we approach Christmas 2025, the world is holding its breath. The talks in Miami are ongoing. The drone factories in Russia are running 24/7. And in the trenches of the Donbass, soldiers are waiting to hear if the land they are standing on is about to be signed away in a hotel room in Florida. The outcome of these next few days will define more than just the borders of Ukraine. If a peace deal is signed that rewards territorial conquest with economic zones and lifted sanctions, a precedent is set. In Beijing, looking across the Taiwan Strait, Xi Jinping is taking notes. Can a forced peace hold? Or will this free economic zone become the staging ground for the next, even larger war? We will be monitoring the situation hour by hour. Subscribe and turn on notifications because history is being written right now.